You know that expression of sleeping beauty or beauty sleep? You may think, oh, that's an old tale. There's actually science behind it. As you go to sleep, there is increased blood flow to your skin. You want to maximize not only the growth of your body, looking young, having nice supple skin. The best thing to do is...
Sleeping sounds easy, but it's actually kind of hard. I pulled together a team of sleep experts to break down the most common problems we're facing with our sleep and what's causing it. So I'll share all their expert tips to get us back on track so that sleeping isn't a chore, but a dream. I think a lot of us fall into this bucket where we sleep at different times every night and it seems to get later and later, which makes it harder to wake up in the morning. And because a lot of us fall into this category, I reached out to my new friend, Dr. Roger Seheult. He specializes in sleep medicine.
We're high achievers. We're trying to finish our homework or the work that's due the next day. We go to bed late. And as a result of that, we have shifted our circadian rhythm into a delayed situation.
So I think we've all heard this term circadian rhythm, but I personally never really knew how it worked and what it had to do with sleep. And he said there's two main systems that are inbuilt in our bodies and brains that allow us to naturally sleep.
First thing that I talked about is known as homeostasis. It's that thing of if you go a long time without water, you become thirsty. That is one half of your sleep. The other half of your sleep is something we call circadian. And that circadian rhythm is a rhythm that causes us to become more alert. So in order to get perfect sleep, you have to have the perfect coordination between the homeostatic and the circadian. When those two things become mismatched, that's when people get insomnia or they get hypersomnia.
And what's worse is that we start developing something called a sleep debt. No one likes debt, but this is what I learned from Sheridan Genrich, who's an author, naturopath, and nutritionist for more than 10 years.
Similar to a bank account. Let's say you've got tons of money in the bank when you're young and you can go out and do whatever you like with it. But if you keep withdrawing and spending without putting any deposits back in, at some point it's going to be pretty sad. And your bank account of sleep is very similar. So sleep debt will just keep accumulating. Even though you might get one night's sleep, it's not going to be enough to top up your bank account. We want to have more than one night's good sleep.
Okay, but let's go back a bit. What's stopping us from sleeping in the first place? So did you know our eyeballs have different receptors in different locations that pick up different types of light that then affect the hormones that are created for us to be able to sleep?
The circadian rhythm is governed in the brain and it tells the body when the body goes to sleep. Well, the major input to the circadian rhythm is light. Specifically light into your eye. Melatonin, which is supposed to be secreted from the pineal gland in the brain, which is supposed to support sleep and make you sleepy, that gets shut down. Your whole circadian rhythm becomes delayed. So now not only do you feel like you're going to go to sleep later, any amount of light that's coming into your eye is going to shut that down. Because the whole rhythm is shifted, you're not going to feel like you're ready to wake up until later. And that, of course, has pretty obvious consequences.
So as you can see, it's a very sensitive system that we have. And it was actually crazy to find out that even one single light source, no matter if it's a night light or not, can affect the sleep. So here's what he says you should do.
These are the two most important, I'll say right here. Number one is let the sun, you don't look directly at the sun, but let the sun fill your environment and have your eyes open. That amount of sunlight in the morning has a tremendous impact in setting up and anchoring your circadian rhythm so that in the evening time, when it's time to go to sleep, there's going to be that strong drive to fall asleep. To give you an idea, when you are inside your home in a regular living room with the lights on, that's about 50 lux of light. That's how we measure light in terms of intensity. When you go outside on a bright sunny day, especially in the morning time, that's about 50 to 100,000 lux. And that can do a lot to really entrain your circadian rhythm. Now, what about light in the evening time? So the worst thing to do is to have blue light up high. So like your regular lights on the ceiling, having those bright after 9 o'clock at night, those are some of the things that are going to impede your ability to sleep and also shift your circadian rhythm to make it later. Having lighting down low, so almost like night lights, and turning down the light, making it dim, would be better. The best thing to do, of course, is to turn off the lights and to go to bed and allow the circadian rhythm to play out and allow melatonin to secrete. You know, there's an expression that says that the hours of sleep before midnight are twice as much worthy than those hours after midnight. That's an old expression that goes back many years. And in fact, science is actually showing that to be the case.
Forcing yourself to sleep when you're not tired. You're in bed and you're like, okay, I have to sleep, but I'm not tired yet. I thought I was tired. Why can't I sleep?
You should really only go to bed when you're tired. Do you have a problem falling asleep, or do you have a problem staying asleep? And those are very different issues. People who have difficulties falling asleep often find that their minds are racing. They can't really shut their minds down.
So what better person than to ask a therapist? So I reached out to Emma McAdam, who's a licensed marriage and family therapist who also makes mental health videos here on YouTube, and they're awesome. And her channel's called Therapy in a Nutshell. And this is what she said.
There's a guy, his name's Martin Reed, and he's an insomnia coach. And he taught me, instead of trying to force myself to sleep, which I can't control, I can choose to do something really relaxing in bed, or I can get up and do something calming out of bed. What that does is that kind of breaks the cycle of like struggling to sleep. And he says, you know, if you ask people who sleep well, what do you do to sleep well? They're kind of like, I don't know, just kind of happens. And you ask people with insomnia, what are you doing to try to sleep well? And they're like, okay, I take melatonin, I do this rigid sleep hygiene, I make sure I do this, I make sure I do this, I make sure I do that, I make sure I do that, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, and those are the people who have insomnia. They've had some poor night's sleep and now they're desperate and they're trying to do everything. But when you have chronic insomnia, where this is happening night after night after night, sleep hygiene can help between 5 and 10% with insomnia. And using like CBTI, which is what I'm describing, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, usually works about 75% of the time with insomnia.
And this was super insightful because a lot of the advice that we hear is just to force ourselves to sleep. And what they're saying is actually taking a much softer approach. So here are the 2 tips that they shared with us.
You can choose one of 2 things. Either do something in bed that's really restful, or get up and do something out of bed. And so I decided, for me, it's like literally listening to archaeology shows. Yeah. A lot of times I fall back to sleep in 5 or 10 minutes. And when I don't, when I have one of those rough nights, I lay in bed for an hour and I listen to archaeology shows. It's like kind of breaking that struggle of like, I have to sleep, which stops me from sleeping.
We often tell them, if they can't fall asleep in their bedroom, to get out of their bedroom and go to a different part of the house. We often talk about making sure they're not watching television in their bedroom, working in their bedroom. We want to associate the bedroom with sleep and success.
So diving a little deeper, next reason is overly anxious thoughts have taken over right before sleeping. Whether it's stress, whether it's anxiety or worry, everything that seems to be building up throughout the day starts attacking us at night. I asked Emma what is the difference between anxiety and stress when it comes to sleep, and is there different ways that we can go about it?
So stress is what's going on in your body. Stress is your body's physiological reaction to a perceived threat. So when you feel like you're, or believe that you're in danger, your body triggers that adrenaline cortisol response with the muscle tension and alertness that comes with it. Worry is the perceived dangers. That's where you think, your thoughts. That's the cognitive aspect of anxiety. So, oh, what if my boss hates me? Oh, what did I say last night? Oh, what am I gonna do for this work project? Those are the thoughts that tell your brain, oh my gosh, I'm in danger of being fired or kicked out of the village and starved to death. And then your body kicks on that stress response. And the combination of those 2 is anxiety. In my definition, anxiety is the combination of the perception of danger, these worry thoughts, with the body's physiological response.
And she shared 2 exercises that we can follow. First is something that she calls scheduled worry.
So one of the best ways to deal with anxiety is to do scheduled worry. Like to catch yourself worrying throughout the day, and that takes a little bit of mindfulness practice, a little bit of attention practice, or you can use an app to kind of prompt you. It buzzes in your pocket, says, are you worrying right now? And you schedule that worry for a certain time of the day, and I recommend that it be after 12 and before 7. You pick 1 hour of the day. What this does is it tells your brain that it can trust you to address these fears, and it doesn't have to keep nagging you with them all day long. The other essential part of this practice is that you don't do it in your head, that you have to do it on paper. And you pick an amount of time to do it, so you say maybe 15 to 30 minutes, and you say every day for 1 month, I'm gonna worry at 5:30 for 15 minutes, and you're gonna write all these worries down on paper. You're not necessarily problem solving, but you can if you want to. And you're just making them concrete. And eventually that trains your brain to know, I don't need to worry all day and all night. My human is gonna address these issues at 5 p.m. every day. It gives you something really active and practical to do.
The next one is willingness exercise. And what I kind of interpreted that as is more of just accepting what you're thinking and acceptance of what you're feeling, rather than trying to push it away.
I think Western psychology for a long time was like, emotions are bad unless it's happiness. All the other ones are bad. Try to make them go away. One of the biggest strategies people use is called willingness. I mean, another word for it is acceptance. And the idea is like, allowing yourself to be willing to feel. And thinking of it as a muscle. I can get better at feeling. I can develop my capacity to feel. And a really simple way to do this is to get into your body instead of in your head. If there's anything uncomfortable about it, can you notice that discomfort without needing to avoid it? And we would do that same practice, willingness practice, with our thoughts and feelings that we don't necessarily prefer. I'm noticing that my mind is racing at night. This is curious. I'm gonna notice those thoughts. I'm gonna be curious about them. I'm gonna observe them for a minute, and then I'm gonna kind of step back from them and look at them. I'm not gonna judge them as saying this is catastrophic.
Next one is for all you foodies or you gluttons. A lot of you sent in that you were struggling with waking up in the middle of the night and not being able to fall asleep, and you're asking why this happens. I was actually surprised how many of you face the same problem. So I asked Sheridan, what's happening?
So people sometimes don't realize that being woken up can be because of low blood sugar. If they've had a high blood sugar food for dinner, let's say you're having pizza and juice, but then you wake up in the middle of the night, look at what you've had for dinner and your stress levels throughout the day, because it's by reflecting backwards that you're able to see what you're mirroring at night.
So we've actually talked about blood sugar more in the sense of hormone balance, skin health, and even mood, because you'll find that blood sugar really dictates everything. And because hormones and blood sugar is something that I'm personally super interested in, if you're also curious, there's a girl called Jessie from Glucose Revolution, and she shares so many good tips. But anyway, here are some of the things that Sheridan shared with us.
Food has a huge impact on our hormones, and especially if we're eating foods unknowingly that are spiking cortisol. So a lot of people don't realize that your blood sugar increases after a meal, and also depending on how you've eaten it. Like if you're eating something really fast and on the run, that's kind of a cortisol response. So you may get to sleep well, but if you're waking a few hours after sleeping because your blood sugar drops, then the body will naturally want to wake you up to keep you alive, because having very, very low blood sugar is a dangerous state to be in.
Now, another reason why we might not be able to fall asleep is you've become overly sensitive to your surrounding, and even the slightest change will disrupt you being able to fall asleep. I found out that it comes down to one word: safety.
So when we feel an emotion, it's great to notice that emotion, to give it a name, and then the next step is to clarify. Is this emotion accurate? Is this helpful? So if you're feeling unsafe all the time, and this is really common, especially with people who've experienced chronic anxiety or who've experienced trauma, is they constantly feel like they're in danger. So my emotion processing model has an acronym: O, we can. O is observe. W is willingness. Can I be willing to feel this? E is explore. Let's ask the question, am I safe right now or not? Am I actually safe right now? And a lot of times when we feel in danger, it's because we're having thoughts of the future or thoughts of the past. So it can be helpful to remind myself, like, here, in this moment, I am safe. And a grounding skill is to look around your room, like open your eyes, to use your peripheral vision, which actually turns on the parasympathetic response, and say, here I am safe right now.
And she said, practicing gratitude and kindness towards yourself and allowing yourself once again to feel and be present. And then Roger also suggested it's pivotal that you create a safe environment. So the bed should be something that you go to sleep. You want to disassociate the link that the bed is a stressful place. So if you are, or you have thoughts like that, remove yourself, do something else, and then come back for sleep. What if I told you those supplements and gummies that you're taking for sleep are actually a sham?
The most common supplements I would see people take for sleep problems would be melatonin, magnesium, and herbs. The main things to know with these are that the dose of melatonin should be fairly low. Not everyone responds well. I've seen patients who are so depleted actually become stimulated from melatonin because they've got none of their own to build. And so starting on a lower dose is better. The other ones would be magnesium. Magnesium's used for over 300 different enzyme conversions in the body. So it's a big player. I would talk to your health professional about which form suits you best. And they're actually considered food quality in America. And what that means to a buyer is the ingredients that they've used. Are they using cheap fillers and binders that will actually irritate your gut? Or are they using very pure, simple ingredients? And that's why you pay more for what you've got.
And it was really interesting because then I started thinking, oh, this is like skincare where you can pay a premium for a really expensive bottle, but there's just a bunch of ingredients that maybe aren't so great. What about gummies?
Okay, well, gummies, I didn't even put them in the supplement category because the word gummy is marketed towards the children for a start, but it is usually pure sugar first. If there is any herb or other ingredients in there, they will be minimal. And they're very likely doing not only wasting your money, but you're not getting the real power of nutrition in those. We want people knowing that nature has the answers, but when man has manipulated nature, we don't get the best results.
So here are some tips that she shared with us.
Forms that you get are really going to affect absorption. So tablets have the lowest absorption, then capsules, then powders, then liquids. There's a scale. As a general rule, I avoid recommending anything from a supermarket. Buy your food there and your toilet paper, but not your supplements. Because I've seen people come in to see me in clinic with bags of supplements, and they've also got kidney damage. So I've seen the consequences of long-term supplement use that has not been prescribed. Better quality brands will put excipients on there. That just means what the fillers and things that they've used. They will disclose that. Look for brands that will be clinician recommending.
For all you coffee drinkers, the caffeine's half-life could be keeping you up. If you're like me and you hadn't even heard of this term half-life before this, you're not alone.
Yeah, well, coffee is one of the stronger levels of caffeine. Not only coffee, but energy drinks, tea, chocolate. Some people are affected by that as well because there's a half-life of caffeine and we all clear that very differently. And what we're knowing, there's a gene actually involved depending on whether you've got a fast or slow clearance of this. And caffeine is a brain stimulant. What that really means is that it's also affecting the adenosine molecule in the brain, which makes you feel sleepy. It's the sleep driver.
And Dr. Seheult also mentioned the adenosine and caffeine relationship.
The way that caffeine makes you more alert and awake is actually by suppressing adenosine levels.
So the tips for this one really comes down to kind of trial and error and finding out and understanding your own body. If you feel like you're super sensitive to caffeine, you'll probably know it. So it's better to shift these caffeinated drinks to earlier in the day and also reduce it to just maybe 1 cup. And then if you feel like you're a little bit more tolerant, that's fine. You can keep it to maybe 2 or 3 o'clock as the latest time to consume caffeine. Now this one is definitely for me. Your sleeping posture is misaligned. Let me just show you this thing. A rectangle or square, no, or cube pillow. So I'm a side sleeper and I never really thought of it as much until I started getting a lot of shoulder and back and neck pain all of a sudden. This is your 30s, guys. And I was like looking for a solution and found this pillow, which is called the Cube pillow, specifically designed for side sleepers to alleviate the pressure of normal pillows, because what I found out is that a lot of pillows are designed for back sleepers, which is typically what you think of. And when I started using this, it completely solved all my back issues over the course of a couple of days. I had to reach out to Jay Davis, who's the founder and CEO of the Pillow Cube.
Most people in America specifically are side sleepers. For whatever reason, the bedding industry really thinks that everyone's a back sleeper. I think a lot of it is because that's when you go into a mattress store and you test out a mattress, everyone lies on their back first and then moves to kind of their normal position. It's been interesting learning that a lot of countries are shifting more towards side sleeping. So like when countries shift towards a more Western style of sleep, so like mattresses instead of like a mat, they usually shift more towards side sleeping.
And especially for women as well, he shared something super interesting.
Women usually, once they start having children, they usually switch to side sleeping because they have to. They can't sleep on their back or their stomach while pregnant. And so you see like this big shift, like once women become mothers.
If you guys are like me and you haven't really thought much about the position that you fall asleep in, this might be one that actually cures all your sleep issues. So yes, I'm very excited. I've turned a lot of my side sleeping friends onto this guy, so we will put you back right here. All right, last reason, guys. Your sleeping temperature might not be ideal. So this is very personal because I also find Thomas has a completely different temperature gauge than I do. So if you find yourself overly sweating or you find yourself overly cold, like your limbs are always cold when you sleep, this will depend on each person, so you have to adjust it accordingly. So I asked Dr. Seheult about the body temperature and sleep and how that affects everything.
So one of the ways that scientists actually have of figuring out where someone is in their circadian rhythm is checking their core body temperature. Now, we won't get into too much detail about how they do that, but let's just put it this way, certain college students will do just about anything for money.
I just imagine the little chicken thermometer when you're cooking, you're like stabbing inside.
Exactly. So that's how they measure continuously core body temperature. And the point being is that we're able to very carefully and know exactly where someone is in their circadian rhythm, because if someone has a perfect circadian rhythm, their temperature nadir, which is a way of saying their lowest temperature, is at about 4 o'clock in the morning, 4 to 5 o'clock in the morning. And that's an important thing because light at different aspects, either before that nadir or after that nadir, will have different effects on the circadian rhythm. For instance, light before that nadir, like around 11, 12, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, will have the tendency to delay that circadian rhythm, but light early in the morning has the opposite effect. It actually advances the circadian rhythm. The point being is that your body has a much better time of sleeping if it's in a cooler room. And the reason is because your temperature nadir is during the time when you are sleeping.
So is there a specific temperature that like people should set their rooms to test?
I've heard 68, 69, that's kind of a good temperature for people to set their room to, but it's also a matter of preference, right? I mean, anyone who's been married or slept with somebody next to them in bed will know that, sometimes they want the covers and sometimes they don't want the covers. So it's also a matter of preference.
So here are some tips that I've found. It really comes down to materials. I like sleeping a little bit warmer, so I like thicker blankets. Meanwhile, if you're a guy or you find yourself running hot, you can look for materials that are cooling. So things like silk, mulberry silk, sateen, specific types of cotton that allow for more aeration. And even for your pillow, there's different memory foams that have channels in the memory foam that allow for air to kind of like flow through, which gives you more of a cooling effect. If you're interested, the Pillow Cube also has an ice cube. How cute is that? Try sleeping in a few different temperature ranges and see which one is just right. A tip for if you do sleep with someone, like a husband, for example, who's on a completely different temperature to you, I would also say get your own quilts. So with all these expert tips and tools that you can implement into your routine, I'm sure we'll be able to get ourselves on the right track to get the best sleep possible. And for those of you who want more, we've actually uploaded the entire conversation between Roger and Emma onto our podcast, It's Within. So head over there on any podcast viewing platform and get more insights from the experts themselves. And last of all, if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like and a thumbs up. It really helps us to create more of these types of informative videos so that we can all live better and healthier lives together. We'll see you in the next one. Bye!